We're in Luke chapter 10 this morning. Luke chapter 10. We'll read verses 1 to 16. It says, "After this the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them on ahead of him, 2 by 2, into every town and place where he himself was about to go. And he said to them, 'The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Go your way. Behold, I am sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. Carry no money bag, no knapsack, no sandals, and greet no one on the road. Whatever house you enter, first say, peace be to this house. And if a son of peace is there, your peace will rest upon him. But if not, it will return to you. And remain in the same house, eating and drinking what they provide, for the laborer deserves his wages. Do not go from house to house. Whenever you enter a town and they receive you, eat what is set before you. Heal the sick in it, and say to them, the kingdom of God has come near to you. But whenever you enter a town and they do not receive you, go into its streets and say, even the dust of your town that clings to our feet we wipe off against you. Nevertheless, know this, that the kingdom of God has come near. I tell you, it will be more bearable on that day for Sodom than for that town. Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago, sitting in sackcloth and ashes. But it will be more bearable in the day of judgment for Tyre and Sidon than for you. And you, Capernaum, will you be exalted to heaven? You shall be brought down to Hades. The one who hears you, hears me. And the one who rejects you, rejects me. And the one who rejects me, rejects him who sent me." This passage is like one of those passages that really changed my life. When I grew up overseas in Thailand and was in like a Christian missionary bubble. So I didn't really have any non-Christian friends. Our school, every teacher was a Christian. I mean, this might sound nuts to you guys, but it's like everyone was Christian in our little circles. And I remember when I was 18 coming to university in England and went to Loughborough, which is quite a sports-heavy university. Well, it's the number one sports university in the world. And I remember my first day at Loughborough, and I was just like, I've never felt this different in my life. First conversation I had with the guy that was rooming next to me was, what's your favorite kind of beer? And I said, I don't really like beer. That was a bad start. I remember chatting in the kitchen. They got us all into like the kitchen for like the shared accommodation, and they were having conversations that I thought, I just cannot believe we're talking about this. And one of the areas that really encouraged me is I went to a Christians in Sport group. Christian Sport is a ministry that seeks to reach the world of sport for Christ. There's a man who was leading it, Dave Hampton. And the first week I went to Christians in Sport, it was at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. They read this passage about the harvest and the harvest field, and he said to me, you know, the volleyball club that you're going to go and play for is your harvest field, and are you going to labor for the Lord or not? And I remember as an 18-year-old having never really done any of that stuff, the Lord used that moment in this passage to reshape how I saw every situation I was in. It really changed my outlook on life. And so I'm really excited to dive into Luke chapter 10 this morning. Context, where are we in Luke's gospel? Up to kind of verse chapter 9, Luke's been focusing on who is Jesus. It focuses a lot on his miracles and trying to just figure out who is this guy. And then from Luke 9, there's a shift to, okay, Peter says you're the Christ. What does it mean to follow him? And you'll notice as we're going through it that there's a big shift from focusing on his miracles to focusing on his teaching. What does it mean to follow Jesus? And also in chapter 9, verse 51, it's important. Chapter 9, 51 is like, it is the turning point for the gospel that he sets his face to go to Jerusalem. Now he's finished in the north of Israel and he's going down to the cross to do the work that he's been sent to do. So the outline, in this bit, the task set before us, that we're harvesters and that Jesus is Lord of the harvest. And number 2, the method that's set before us, pray, go, tell, and that Jesus' method was meals. So that's where we're going to go this morning. Now, this passage is super similar to Luke 9. When I was studying it, I was thinking, this is like almost the exact same passage as the passage that I preached, would have been maybe, a month ago now, something like that. And I just want to highlight what is the same and then what is different, because Luke's the only one that records what he records in chapter 10. So here we go. What's the same? A lot. If you look at chapter 9, it's pretty much like the entire thing is repeated in chapter 10. So 1, we saw that Jesus apostles his followers. Now here in chapter 9, he's sending out the capital A apostles, the pillars of the church. But he continues that pattern to send out his ambassadors. It's my granddad's 88th birthday today. And I've heard the story that when they were missionaries over in Manila, in the Philippines, he sang in a choir. I don't know if when they visit, you'll hear him singing in parts. He loves that. And they were in a choir, and he was standing next to another man, another Western guy, American guy. And my granddad just tried to get to know him, say, oh, what's your name? And what do you do? And this guy stood next to him and said, oh, I'm the American ambassador for, in the Philippines. That's a big deal. That's a big person. And my granddad said to him, oh, I'm an ambassador too. He said, oh, what country are you an ambassador for? And my granddad turned to him and said, the kingdom of heaven. There you go. There you go. And Jesus says, that's the kind of authority, though, that Jesus gives to these guys. Official proclamation. And he says, go out, and in both chapters, go out, preach the kingdom, and heal. Both show up in both chapters. Both of them say travel light. They both talk about not taking extra stuff on the journey. In this case, it even says don't take any extra sandals. And it's worth just noting on that one, because I didn't mention it in chapter 9, that this idea of going out and not taking spare stuff, that's not a forever command. At the end of Luke's gospel, after the resurrection, Jesus says, I told you before, don't take extra stuff, and now I'm telling you, take extra stuff. If you don't have a sword, buy one. If you don't have 2 swords, buy another one. He shifts gears. This is a temporary traveling light. He says, go into homes in both situations. And in both situations, he says, if you're rejected, shake the dust off your feet. We saw, didn't we, in that chapter, he sends people out not prepared, not ready. They're not trained properly. And he just says, go. Watch what I can do. What's different? So if we're thinking about the task that sets before us, first off, just notice in chapter 9, the apostles, sorry, it's a bit small, but the 12 are given power and authority as the capital A apostles that he doesn't do with these 72 others. He just appoints them and sends them. And the second thing is, the apostles in chapter 9, he just sends out into the kind of surrounding villages. In chapter 10, these 72 that he sends them, I don't know if you noticed it, he sends them ahead of him, 2 by 2, into every town and place where he himself was about to go. So this isn't in chapter 9, let's just get the message out. This is in chapter 10 to these 72 guys. No, I'm going down to Jerusalem and I'm sending you to those towns so that when I come down, they're ready to meet me. That's the job of the Christian, of anyone who follows Jesus, is to ask people, are you ready to meet Jesus? Now in chapter 9, that was Jesus is going down to go to the cross and to rise again and to ascend into heaven. But today we still know Jesus is going to come back. So we will meet Jesus one day, as will the world. And it's our job, isn't it, to ask people, are you ready to meet Jesus when you see him face to face? So the tasks that set before us, let me just read these verses again. He said to them, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send laborers into his harvest. Go your way, and behold, I am sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. Carry no money bag, no knapsack, no sandals, and greet no one on the road. Jesus says there is a plentiful spiritual harvest. Now, when you read this, you might think immediately the world. Again, where I grew up in Thailand, less than 1% Christian. It's like 50, 60 million people in one country who don't know the Lord, who've rejected Jesus. The harvest is plentiful, and there's so much need in the world to go. Someone's got to tell them. Someone needs to go. How can they hear if they're not hearing, if it's not preached, and how can they preach unless they are sent? But also, it's not just a global harvest that we've got to cast our mind to, it's a local harvest as well. Think about your own situations in like the circles that you're in at the moment. There's just so few Christians in the area. There's so few people to go and tell. I think for me at school, 120, 130 staff members. How many Christians do you think we have in the staff? I think it's like 4. And that's just one school in one little nook. The harvest is plentiful, and yet the laborers are few. But Jesus is saying here then, because he says, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into a harvest field. And then he just says, go. So what's he saying to these guys? It's not really giving them time to pray in some respects. He's saying, you're the laborers. The Christian is a harvester. The Christian is a laborer. And so for you guys this morning, I'd encourage you, as these 72 had to, it's like, grab your tools. I think it's a sickle that they used to use to harvest, or a scythe, and go into the field. Go harvest. The harvest is plentiful, and you're one of the laborers. It's interesting, isn't it, when he says, pray for the Lord to send laborers into the harvest field. There's almost an implication that there are laborers who just don't go into the harvest field. Every Christian is a laborer, but I'm not sure every Christian is going into the harvest field to harvest. That was my experience when I was 18. I wasn't. That I would sit on the sidelines and think, well, that's up to someone who's better at it than me, or that's up to someone who's paid to do, or that's up to the special people. And I wouldn't go into the harvest field. The challenge is that you as well? Now, I don't know if any of you guys saw the TV show. It's the most popular TV show on Amazon for the last few years now. It's Clarkson's Farm. And it's just tracking Jeremy Clarkson, who doesn't know how to farming. And he has crop farming, so he harvests. And the end of the last season that they just released, the last episode is focused on the harvest, and he's also trying to open a restaurant at the same time. But I don't know if you've not seen it, what happens is that the harvest, the weather is so bad that he's constantly stressed because they're checking, is it ready to harvest? It's too wet. Is it ready? And then I've got to get back to the restaurant, and that's not ready. And then all of a sudden he's harvesting until like 4 a.m. Harvesting, shown in that show, is really tiring. You got to be ready all the time. When you get stuck in, you've got to keep going. It's urgent when it's ready. You just got to go. You got to drop whatever you're doing, get in the field. It's not comfortable work. And Jesus says here, it's not even safe work. He says, I'm sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. To harvest in the Lord of the harvest field isn't going to be safe. But it's urgent. It's so urgent that he says, don't greet anyone on the road. Now, that's not to say he's against greeting people. But he's saying it's so vital that this message goes out. Don't stop and dilly-dally and get distracted by other things. How often do we have loads of, small conversations with people over the course of many years, a lot of chat, but never actually have a serious conversation about that they're going to meet Jesus one day. Now, when you're hearing this, that you're a harvester and that Jesus is calling you to go into the harvest field, for some, I think for a lot, and this has been my experience, that's a really daunting task. You get really nervous. It's kind of like a roller coaster. I remember going to Alton Towers back when I was at uni, and there's one of the roller coasters that just goes straight down. It's actually a pretty cruel roller coaster because it takes you up, and then it gets you over the edge, and then it stops for about 3 seconds, you're just looking over the edge, and then it just drops you. And I remember lining up for that roller coaster being really nervous. I'm not going to enjoy this. And yet after the roller coaster, what do you get? You get a bit of an adrenaline rush, don't you? And you're just oh, that was great. Let's do that again. And then you get back in the line and you think, oh, what am I doing? and then you finish it and then you're like, yeah, let's do it again. And you're going back and forth. But every time it gets a little bit easier. You experience a little bit more excitement. That's like going into the harvest. The first time is really, really nerve-wracking. But after you've done it once, you realize what Jesus can do through, insufficient people such as ourselves, and you get this joy in you that I'm doing the work he's called me to do, and you think, let's go again. And then the next time it comes up, you think, ah. And it doesn't really, that nervousness never goes, but like a roller coaster, it gets easier and easier to get on. I wonder if you've ever had the joy of seeing someone come to faith. I wonder if you've ever had the joy of sharing the gospel with someone and they believe. It is a wonderful moment. It is a wonderful moment. It's a moment that, I'm not going to say it's better than the wedding day, but it's up there. It is up there with this joy of seeing the Lord save. So we've got to get in the field. And we're a harvester, and yet we see also in this passage that not only are we harvesters, but Jesus is Lord of the harvest. When Jesus calls you to go into the field, he's not calling you to go into the field from like an office on the side of the field. Where does Jesus call you into the field from? Jesus is in the middle of the field. Jesus is already there. This is his harvest field. Jesus is the ultimate harvester. When it got tiring for Jesus, he didn't quit. When he got exhausted, he didn't quit. He didn't get sidetracked with other stuff. No matter what it cost him, he stuck to his task to harvest. How did he do that? Well, first of all, he came to earth. He came to earth as a man. He left the joys of heaven to come to a place where he was scorned and ill-treated, because he knew that the sinfulness of man, they could not save themselves. They could not have the relationship with God that they needed. So he came. He was sent by his Father into the harvest field, and he went without second thought. Like we saw the other week, his face was set on that task, like flint. We see that the way he went about this is he went to the cross. He died in man's place, doing the thing that they could not do. He offers them then forgiveness. By rising again, he offers them new life. He offers them a union with himself that brings relationship with God and brings you everything you ever need. Jesus says to the 72 here, I am sending you as a lamb in the midst of wolves. And he's saying that because he was the lamb sent in the midst of wolves. And like a lamb, he was led to the slaughter. He's not calling you to do anything that he himself has not already done. And he did it at far greater cost to himself. A far more difficult task. You might be thinking I'm just not a good harvester. I don't have the personality. I don't have the temperament. I don't have all the answers. But you have to remember, when you go into the harvest field, you've got your hand on the sickle to harvest. It's not only your hand on the sickle. The Lord Jesus is there with you, holding you, strengthening you to do the task. And he wants you to know how powerful and strong he is. When we're struggling with this, I was watching a video on YouTube, and they're doing an interview, a guy called Wes Huff, maybe you know him, he's an apologist, and he was being interviewed, and he said to the guy, what's the opposite of love? I don't know what would you answer as the opposite of love? The guy said on the other side of the table, well, the opposite of love is hate. And he said, no, that's not true. Wes said, no, the opposite of love is indifference or apathy, not caring. And for some of us who are on the sidelines or struggling with this, what really can move us from indifference, that we're just not that bothered about it, to being fully fueled into it, is the love of Christ. To love Jesus. And then when you love Jesus, his love, when your spirit's in you, flows out to those you know. If you're on the sidelines, ultimately, it's not a lack of skill that's stopping you. Again, it's a lack of love. It's a lack of love for the Lord. It's a lack of love for the world. And the way that we grow in love for Jesus is to look and see, wow, he went into the harvest field for me. When I rejected him, he labored for me. He died for me. He rose for me. That's what really spurs us on. So that's the task that's set before us. Number 2 is the method. Now, this here, 5 steps on the journey to believing in Jesus. This was a study done. Just read it. The technical name is 5 Thresholds to Postmodern Conversion by some guys in the States, Don Everts and Doug Schaup. And what they're saying is these in kind of post-Christian Western world, these are commonly or typically the 5 steps that people go through before they come to faith. So just have a look at them. Number 1, trusting a Christian. Number 2, becoming curious. Number 3, opening up to change. Number 4, seeking after God. Number 5, living in the kingdom. Interesting, isn't it? I think that sometimes we think, if you look at the screen, people should just jump to number 4. Like I should tell them about Jesus and they just go immediately to number 4. Yes, I'm in. I'll come to church. I'll read the Bible. But these guys are arguing, and I think this is wise, that there's 3 steps that need often happen before trusting a Christian, becoming curious, opening up to change. Another story. I was on a stag do. My brother, my little brother, Callum, he's my age, but he's still smaller than me. And his stag do, he lives down in Leicester, so we went down to the Peak District. We did some very kind things to him that he really enjoyed. And then on the Saturday night, we went out for a curry. And in the group, there was 10 Christian guys and then 1 non-Christian guy. It was a colleague of his from school. And I remember talking to the non-Christian guy, and he's like, I never in a million years thought that I'd be on a stag do with a bunch of Christians and that I'd actually enjoy it. And he was talking, and I was asking him questions, and he said, before I met Callum, this would have been 5 years ago, I thought Christians were idiots. He said, I just thought they were like traditional, they don't have any answers, they just believe what they've been told, and they're stupid. And he said, if a Christian came up to me and talked to me, I'd just be like, I have no interest in hearing what you have to say. He said, and then I got to know Callum, and he began to trust Callum, and then he thought, what is this? What's this all about? And he became curious, and he started asking questions. And then, and I remember at the stag do him saying, maybe like, I'm just starting to think, he said, I'm starting to think like, what if this is true? What if this is legit? It's not just made up. And then it was the night after that, the Saturday night I went for curry, and then on Sunday morning, he got up before all of us, and he went out like 6 a.m. and read the Gospel of Matthew. The whole thing in the morning. And then he came up to Callum the next week and said, hey, Cal, I've got some news for you. He said, I think I'm a Christian. But you notice how it took him to trust a Christian for that whole process to start. Amazing story. Oh, amazing story. What a moment. The Lord saving someone like that. Why am I telling you this? Because I think this is the method that Jesus lays out for us in Luke 10. So here's the method. Pray, go, eat, tell. I'm not saying this is, again, like dogmatic in the sense of Jesus isn't saying he's against street preaching here because that he does that, and he's not against tracts or he's not against different methods of ministry. He wouldn't be against events or anything like that. But this is, I think, the typical method that he expects his followers to follow. One, pray. He says to these guys, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Is that a part of your life? Do you pray regularly for non-Christians that you know? At Christians in Sport at uni, they gave us a card and they made us write 3 names on it of teammates, in our case, sports teammates, and we stuck it in like the back of our phone case or in our wallet or something like that. And they said, every time you see that card, stop and pray for those people. Does that characterize your life? Someone that prays for the non-Christians that you know. Number 2, go. Again, it's so funny, isn't it? Like pray for the Lord of the harvest to send people in verse 2. And so they probably think, okay, let's have a prayer meeting. Let's get together. Let's sit down. Someone make some brews. And then Jesus in verse 3 immediately just goes, go your way. Like we pray as we go. Jesus says to go. Question for you this morning. Will you reach the world of blank for Christ? Will you reach the world of farming for Christ? Will you reach the world of education for Christ? Will you reach the world of business for Christ? Go. Jesus says to go. And he says when you go, there's going to be 2 responses, being received or being rejected. I think the tragedy is not being rejected. I think the greater tragedy than being rejected is never knowing their response. Never knowing. Will they receive him or reject him? Because I've never asked. So let's just look at this, what he teaches about being received. The other week, it was the other month, wasn't it? And we prayed for the Dixon family overseas at the moment. And they mentioned this. They mentioned this exact phrase. They said in our line of work, which is just Luke 10, we often pray for a person of peace. And they were trying to go into the east of Egypt and trying to bring the gospel to people. And they're looking for they said, we're looking for a person of peace. Pray that we meet people of peace. And that's from Luke 10. Jesus says, whatever house you enter, first say, peace be to this house. And if a son of peace is there, or if a person of peace is there, your peace will rest upon him. But if not, it will return to you. I just to encourage you in terms of how we do ministry, how we talk about Jesus, we look for people of peace. In my experience in the last few years, there are people that I'll say, hey, what do you think about Jesus? And they just say, I don't care. And that's it. They're not interested. They don't want a conversation. They don't want anything. And in that moment, you leave it. But sometimes you ask someone, oh, what do you think about faith? Do you have a faith or something like that? And they'll be like, oh, well, I kind of want to talk about it. It's like, that's a person of peace. That's the kind of person that I can really engage with. Sometimes, though, you get rejected. You will get rejected. And Jesus goes so far as to say in verse 16, the one who hears you hears me, and the one who rejects you rejects me, and the one who rejects me rejects him who sent me. Rejection is typical. They've rejected Jesus. They killed Jesus. They will reject us too. And when that happens, it's so serious to reject an ambassador of Christ that when they reject you, they reject Jesus. And therefore, they reject the Father. Jesus says to these towns, doesn't he? I won't go into too much into this, but he says to these towns, it's more bearable on that day for Sodom than for you. And Sodom, if you know Genesis, was not a good place. There is a seriousness to rejecting Jesus. There's a judgment to rejecting Jesus that will come on people. Hell is the punishment for rejecting Jesus. And he says to these towns, Chorazin, Bethsaida where like Peter and Andrew are from, if the mighty works had been done in Tyre and Sidon, again, which are other towns that weren't great at the time, they would have repented long ago. It would be more bearable in the judgment for Tyre than for you. Capernaum, where Jesus did so much ministry, you'll be brought down to Hades. So that's 2. You go and you'll either be received or rejected. Look for people of peace. If they're not a person of peace, Don't beat yourself up. And 3, eat. It's just fascinating, isn't it, in chapter 10, where it says, and remain in that house, in the same house, eating and drinking what they provide. And he goes on to say, whenever you enter town, they receive you, eat what is set before you. So twice he says to eat with people. Jesus is seemingly saying here that eating is key to sharing the message. Eating with people. When was the last time you had a non-Christian round for dinner? When was the last time that a non-Christian ate at your table? Or you went to their house and ate at theirs? This is what he tells the 72 to do, and this is the pattern he sets before us, to eat. I think eating is a wonderful way, again, to go through those steps, trusting a Christian, being curious, opening up to change. Because I think sometimes, if I'm understanding this right, we think, like, I just don't know, I don't know what to say. I don't know even how to get that conversation going. You know, do I just like, at them when they're like in the middle of a job or something? And Jesus says to the 72 here, go to their house and eat with them. And we'll know from experience. I heard one pastor say the best conversations he's ever had evangelistically have been at his dinner table. That's a pattern that we certainly can follow. You know, imagine if in our church, maybe 50, units, family, single, stuff like that. If we all had someone round for dinner once a month, non-Christian, what would that be? 600 people? 600 chances to share the gospel, talk about faith, if it comes up, if they're a person of peace. I think that'd be massive. I really do. And I think especially today with social media that we're so disconnected and there's such loneliness, inviting someone over for your house sends a very, very strong message that we love you, we care for you. And Lord willing, you get a chance to talk about it. And then number 4, tell. It says, the kingdom of heaven has come near to you. To go and do it. To tell. To tell people that with Jesus, they can have peace. They can have peace with God. Peace in their own life. Peace with others. And Jesus says here, the peace that I have with my Father becomes your peace. And then when you eat with them and you get to know them, that becomes their peace too. They will sense something different about you because we are people who are full of peace. And the world is not a peaceful place. And again, just a reminder, if this seems daunting, you're not the only one doing this. So you're not the only one praying. Jesus is praying. He's interceding in heaven. You're not the only one going. Jesus by his Spirit is going forth. You're not the only one eating. You're not the only one at the table when you sit down with a non-Christian to share food. You're not the only one speaking. Jesus is in all of it. That's the method. Pop quiz. Can you fill in the blanks? 3 times. 3 times. Jesus, talking about himself, says, the Son of Man came, or the Son of Man has come. Just see if you can get it real quick. I'll shut the door and then see if you can get it. Okay, what are the 3? Does anyone know? The Son of Man came. What's that? Seek and save the lost. Came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. So Jesus is talking about his mission here. Did anyone get the 3rd one? I didn't know this. I will say I didn't know this until I studied. The Son of Man has come. Luke 7, John the Baptist passage. He says, eating and drinking. And you say, look at him, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. This method is so exemplified by Jesus. One commentator says, in Luke's gospel, Jesus is either coming from a meal, at a meal, or going to a meal. Jesus' ministry was done through meals. We're about to see, aren't we, down there, Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus, I'm eating at your house tonight. He ate with tax collectors. Matthew, follow me. I'm coming to your house tonight for a meal. He ate with sinners. He ate with prostitutes. The woman that anoints Jesus' feet with oil. Jesus was one that ate with people, so much so that he said, I have come eating and drinking. That's how he did it. And I'm not saying that's the only way he did it, but he himself says that is maybe the main way that I'm going to do this. The main way that I'm going to go about seeking and saving the lost, the main way that I'm going to go about serving others and giving my life is eating and drinking. He ate with people all the time. And that's kind of what his offer is. Jesus, and we'll come to this in a second, Jesus offers a place at his table. Jesus offers a place at his table. We're about to do it. Eat with me. Drink with me. Listen to me. That's the joy of a Christian. To know we have a place at the table, and for one day we know at the wedding feast of the Lamb, we will eat and drink with Jesus forever. Jesus' table was a place of ministry for him. And it's a joy that one day we just look forward to. So that's it. The task that we see in this passage of the 72, the task that's set before us to go into the harvest field, and that Jesus is ultimately the one that is harvesting. It's by his power and his strength it happens. And two, the method that's set before us. Pray, go, look for people of peace, eat with them, tell them. That's what Jesus said. That's what I've done when I came. And that's how that you can do it too. I haven't done this before, but I'll just put a challenge up. Weekly challenge. You don't have to do it. Two things. One, maybe this week, go on a prayer walk. Pray that you will go into the harvest field. Pray that the Holy Spirit will give you someone to witness to. Recognize if you've got kids, maybe as husbands, we can love our wives by letting them go on a prayer walk. But that's something I challenge you to do this week. To go and pray that you go into the harvest field and pray for the Holy Spirit to give you someone to witness to. And two, invite someone around for dinner. Maybe this week we all just give someone a ring, shoot them a message, say, hey, do you want to come over for dinner? Why don't we do that this week? You know, and you might think I'm too busy. I'm not that good at this. I'm not at that stage of life. I'm not ready. Trust him. When you step out in faith, he doesn't let you sink. He'll hold you together. Yeah?